Welcome back once again to the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. Today we're going to be tackling another of the new dungeons added in 2.2, Halatali Hard Mode. Now if you recall, the original Halatali was done very early on in the story mode, and occurred when a number of monsters took over a place that a lot of the Colosseum fighters trained in. Due to your actions, they've reclaimed it, and so, they've turned it back into their training area. There's nothing actually wrong this time. They just invited you back in to give it a go. Being one of the 3 expert level dungeons, this is one of the higher tier of the dungeons, requiring a slightly higher item level in order to be efficient at it. Though I'm sure you could get by with an average item level of probably 70 pretty easily. Though most people that run it are I-90 plus, if only because they're grinding tomes for the various endgamey things. As usual, it's divided up into 3 different sections, each one slightly different from the one prior. And Ogre's decided to join us as well. Take a brief moment for everybody to buff themselves up before we rush on in. Now, the main gimmick in this first section is there are large weights, let's call them, chained to the ceiling, and these will drop down and smash into the ground. If you get hit by one of these, it does minimal damage, 200 to 500 damage or so. But it also puts a debuff on you that is a defense down debuff. This also, however, works on the enemies. So if you want to make very quick work of the enemies, haul them up to these and get the group pounded by them. This will change a, say, 500 damage attack into 700-800 damage. And these things will go down like butter. The damage does add up, by the way, so do be careful not to get hit yourself by the weights. It's no big deal if you get hit by hit by them once or twice, but don't just stand there like an idiot and get hit by it every single time. That's about all the more complicated it is, though. There's only a few different enemies in here. The large basilisk-like creatures, of course, have a conal AoE, as they are wont to do. The only real new enemy here are the mammoths. Now, you actually have to defeat all of the mammoths for the next door to open. You don't really have to defeat anything else, but there is a mammoth in each group. So in the end, there's really only one skippable enemy in this entire first section. Now, the mammoths, on the other hand, they come in different flavors. They come in a support type, an attack type, and the like. They've got a couple circular AoEs and the like themselves, but for the most part, nothing in here should give you enough worry that it's a big deal. Now, you see Ogre just jumped off a cliff there, and this is something you can do if you want to skip fighting that basilisk that was up top, because if you hop down here, you do have to have everybody else hop down as well, of course, and you do have to kill all of the mammoths over here. But at the very least, you get to skip that basilisk. And that's not quite all of them. We've still got one more group to go. And of note, the basilisks also have a circular AoE, and the dogs have a directional AoE, but for the most part, it's the same as always. You see a red circle, get out of it. I've said it before, I've said it again. If you're a healer, please don't do the knockback thing. Not while you're in a party. But that brings us to the first boss, a coin counter type monster, which of course many people said, oh no, but he's really not that bad. In fact, it's easy enough to beat this boss without getting hit by anything at all. He does still have the swipe and the... I forget what the other one is. Swing. Swipe and swing. Whenever he does the suck in like that, where everybody gets pulled up towards him, run away because he's about to do the swing, and then as soon as you dodge the swing, get back to him again because he's going to use Eye of the Beholder to hit everyone. Now when he starts readying the large attack here, there's a small machine off to one side that's chained to the mammoth that's circling the arena. You need somebody to hit that switch, which activates the mammoth, puts a circle around the mammoth. You go get in the circle. When it disappears, you gain a mana wall debuff that lets you survive the attack. Simple enough. And then as soon as he's done with that, he's going to use piercing laser, or not piercing laser, I don't know, some kind of laser. He's going to use that a couple times. He will point it at random people in the group. So pretty much just never stand in front of him, and you should be fine. And that's about it for the fight. At that point, he's recycling. He does have a degree of an auto attack. His auto attack comes in the form of the swing. Or the swipe, not the swing. But even that is something that it takes him just a moment to prep, and the tank can even run through him to dodge it. This fight can actually be beaten without getting hit at all. So maybe it takes a second to figure out what you're doing, but it's because he does have a couple attacks that maybe you wouldn't have a heads up before he does it how to deal with it. But especially after you've seen the fight once, it's very easy to go through it a second time without any trouble at all. As usual, I pass on pretty much all gear, and I greed on any regular crafting item drops. I greed because most people need on those, and so if you actually want them, feel free to need. I feel greed because I never know. I'll occasionally find a group where people greed them, and I don't want to be like the one jerk that needed it when everybody else greeded it. But overall, it's not actually a big deal. Just need the things if you want them. If you're not going to use them for crafting, you can sell them for a mild amount of money. And with the first boss down, we're going into the second section. You just had to talk to the NPC to teleport you here. We'll start with 2 coral pups that you have to defeat. And as you defeat one, another coral will come out. However, the next coral that comes out is a much larger one. This one is a pup, as you can see. The next one is the mommy. Now, I've always been curious, because after you defeat this second one, the Torama comes out, which is another large one, even larger than the pit coral we're fighting now. I've always wondered though, what happens if you kill the pup, then you kill this coral before killing the other pup? Does the Torama come out when you kill the coral proper, or does he only come out when you kill the other pup? But regardless, nothing big about them. You'll generally be fighting 2 at a time until you get to the Torama at the end. They've got a couple AoEs to worry about, such as the circular AoE, but nothing to really worry about that much. And with the 4 of them down, we can move on. There's a chest over there that you can see Ogre running to get. There's actually another chest that we missed going up to, but I'll take care of that. I'll take care of showing everybody where that is later. Now there's a couple enemies up here. I usually go for the vulture first, but if the basilisk is near enough by, I'll go for him, because the basilisk should take priority to take down. But of course, if the vulture's half dead, then I'm not going to stop beating on that to beat on something else. But we were lucky enough this time for the basilisk to be right there, so kill that one and then go for the other ones. As I said, tend to go for the vulture first, if only because he's got a little more of a painful AoE to deal with. I think he's just got a conal. But even then, no big deal. None of the regular enemies in here really are. I feel as though there are maybe 1 or 2 enemies, such as the corals, that may put a debuff on the tank. But I honestly am not sure. If there is, it's never been a problem that I've noticed, so I don't imagine it's anything too big. With those enemies down, we can go down the stairs to the next large room. This room, we're dealing with bears. Yes, bears. It's always struck me as a little odd that there are bears in Final Fantasy. Like, I'm lagging just a little bit there, but... Or no, perhaps that was the healer knocking him back again. It's hard to tell sometimes. It always struck me as a little odd that there were bears in Final Fantasy. Like, I don't know, putting real-world, like, creatures in-game, I don't know, it's weird to me. The bear hits kind of hard, but not, like, that hard, really, and he has a good 90-degree conal AoE that can cause a little bit of problems, but overall it's not that big a deal. Actually, it's not 90 degrees, it's like 120 degrees. So yeah, kind of a big AoE to deal with, big conal AoE to deal with, but in general, not a big deal. You'll be after you kill the first bear, 2 more will come out, and you've got to fight these 2. There's also a basilisk, as you saw off in the distance, wandering about. If you pull the bears too close to him, you may actually tick him off. And then you'll be fighting 3 of them at once. So try not to grab him unless you feel like just AoEing everything down, but that's your call. Having defeated all of them, once again there's another chest, and I was confused for a very brief moment here by the pillar that blended in with the wall. I couldn't see where Ogre was running, but I knew there was a room over there, and there's a chest in there. Now, just after that's done, there's one last little pull that almost feels unnecessary, but it's just 2 vultures and another monkey. With them down, we can now progress to the next area. Someone has to actually talk to the NPC to raise many of these gates. But the next boss is the Catoblopus. The boss here actually doesn't have a lot of HP, but you're spending a lot of time not fighting him due to various mechanics. Of note, one major one is you can see the 4 pillars around the room that now have an orb on them. At one point in the fight, you will have to run over and use the orb, which is why it's important for everyone to kind of divide up, because you will each need to pick 1 orb. Of note, that AoE, very, very dangerous for the mages since they have to run so far to get out of the way. However, all you have to do is turn around so you're not looking at him, and it doesn't affect you. But once you use an orb, it's gone for a brief amount of time, so you can't have everybody running to the same orb. So it's important for everyone to kind of split up and position themselves so they can all claim an orb individually. This will put the gloam effect on you, which will make it so his attack there doesn't affect you, otherwise it puts a debuff on you and does some damage. And almost as soon as that's done, you can see his eye turns red and gets a little corrupt. As long as it's like that, he screams out a defense down stacking buff, so you will take more and more and more damage the longer he goes. So you want to defeat that, or you're just not going to be able to, or you're just going to die to the damage. Another eye laser thing on the ground there, and then once again the demon eye. You notice I don't have much time to actually wail on him. And now you can see this is normally where you can look at how much HP he has left, and because he doesn't have that much HP, instead of focusing on the eye, you can just power down the boss himself. Now here I wasn't really sure if the Dragoon was actually fighting it as well, and it looked like it maybe had a little too much health left. But you can just kind of eat damage and beat the boss down, because, as I said, he doesn't have a lot of HP. But with the eye dead now, we should be able to just completely finish him off. Not the most complicated fight in the world. You're going to be spending a lot of time dodging, and you have to go over to get the eyeball, or to get the orb thing, and then you got to beat the eyeball when it shows up. That's about it, really. But that thus ends section 2, and we now get to move on to the third section of the dungeon. Now, the first section focused on kind of the mammoths and some random enemies and the like. Oh, by the way, after you teleport in, if you turn around and run back here, you can see there's a couple of basilisks down there, but there's also a chest down there. You can probably slink over and get that chest without ticking off either of the basilisks, but I'm not going to risk it without anybody over there, or I'll probably just get killed. So I'm sure they're wondering where I am, but I was showing you that it was there. So the first section was small enemies, groups of small enemies. Second section dealt largely with larger monstrous beasts. The third section has you fighting other Colosseum goers. Now, this first fight and the third fight in here are actually where I really like it when the tank marks them with a number. Because here, you can either kill the two wolves before the Lancer in the middle, or you can kill the Lancer, then the two wolves. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's nice if everybody's on the same page. And if the tank so much as tosses a 1 mark on one of the dogs, or a 1 mark on the Lancer, it's much easier, and I know I'm not picking wrong. I'll generally, if nobody marks anything, I'll generally go for the dogs first, but then I'll keep an eye on the Lancer, and if I see other people beating on the Lancer, then I'll go ahead and change over and beat on the Lancer as well. Nowhere else in the dungeon is it really that important to mark enemies. Just kind of attack the bigger, nastier looking thing, and you should be alright. It's really only here that I'd like to see something marked, and the third fight here that I'd like to see something marked. But that was the first one. The Lancer has quite the nasty cross AoE there, but it's simple enough to get out of range of it. Be kind of neat if actual Lancers got that skill, though. Now, the second fight is only 2 enemies, and the reason you don't need mark for this one is because one's a mage and one's a tank. So, you're going to kill the mage first. He'll cast spells and do his cast spelly thing, assuming you don't just beat the tar out of him and interrupt everything. And then the tanker dude, the Marauder, I do believe, he will be... Is it a Marauder? I don't think it's a Marauder. I think he's got a sword. But he's got a couple AoEs himself. He's got a very short directional AoE, and he's got a circular AoE around him as well. One of the two is called Spirits Without, which is kind of interesting in comparison to the Spirits Within that we're used to seeing people use. But they go down without much trouble. The Marauder, of course, has a fair amount of HP. I'm going to call him a Marauder because I don't know what to call him elsewise, and I forget. It's probably up there, and you can look at it, but I can't read the text because I'm editing. Yay! But this ends the second fight, and then we go to the third fight. Now, this one is once again a tank. This one is a Marauder. I think I can actually read that it says Marauder, and there are also 2 archers. Same deal as the dogs and the Lancer. I'll generally go for the archers first, but I really like it when the tank marks one of them, so I know I'm at least facing the right guy. Looks like the Dragoon decided to kill the other one, so I guess we're sort of working it out, if it's only taking us a little bit longer. And then, once again, the Marauder does the same thing that we've seen before. This guy is actually a Marauder. The other guy, I don't know. I don't think he's a Marauder. Really similar thing, though. He's got a conal AoE, circular AoE. Really just a bunch of stuff that you just get out of the way of if you see it. He should go down simple enough, and that's actually the end of the third section, which means we can now move our way up to fight the final boss of the entire area. Now, the final boss of the entire area is actually many little bosses. You are a party of 4, so the first thing you get to fight is a party of 4. Just as your party is made up of a tank, 2 DPS, and a mage, so too is theirs. So, of course, the first thing you're doing, as was numbered there, is killing the mage. The Lancer of the opponent's group ignores hate. He will focus down on one specific person, so you want to kill him first because the tank probably won't have hate on him. What I tend to do is I try to follow in after the tank, so I'm second nearest to them, and that generally makes me the one targeted by the Lancer. And I know I can take a beating, so I'm willing to take that blow for a little while we kill the number 1, and then immediately turn to number 2 to get the Lancer off my butt. There's also an Archer, who I think the Archer is the one that put down the circle that I'm yet to figure out what even does. It doesn't appear to put a buff on them, and it doesn't appear to put a debuff on us, so I got nothing. You kill the third one, then you kill the tank, and then the real boss shows up. The real boss, of course, being the small Lalafell next to the big guy. The big guy is mostly just an annoyance. The little guy you want to kill first, though, because he's going to be causing far more trouble than the big guy. He has a couple of abilities, Absolute Bind being one of them. And then the Thal's Fury that he casts. He casts these at the same time. He'll cast other spells on occasion as well, minor fire spells and the like. The large Manticore there will be putting out a number of AoEs, including a dropped AoE he can drop down. But as for Absolute Bind and Thal's Fury, what happens is he casts Absolute Bind, and then as soon as it hits, 2 of the 4 party members will be bound in place. They cannot move, nothing. Your animation is even frozen, which is kind of funny. Try and strike a good pose. But they're chained to a large spire in the ground, so whoever's not frozen needs to run over and click on that spire to free them. As soon as he finishes casting Absolute Bind, you can see we have to run over to free the 2. As soon as he finishes casting Absolute Bind and actually freezing them, he starts casting Thal's Fury, which is the large AoE you kind of don't want to get caught in. A tank can actually take a blow from Thal's Fury, though, and I've seen it done a few times. If I'm at full health, I imagine I can take a blow from it as well. But honestly, just don't get hit by it. It seems like once he gets low on HP, he stops casting Absolute Bind, and you can just kind of whittle away the last few percents. They probably don't want too much in the way of complications of him casting that while he's dead. And then once that's done, only the Manticore remains, and you can just unload on him. He's got a rear conal AoE, a frontal conal AoE, he's got an AoE that he can drop down on random people. He will occasionally target someone who's not the tank and charge at them. But really a lot of this is stuff that you don't have to worry that much about. Unload on him, finish him off. The big deal with him, honestly, is that he causes a lot of problems for you while you're fighting the other guy. Take out the Lalafell first, and you're good to go. Now, while everyone else is actually leaving, there's one other chest that I want to show you where is that was at the very beginning that we missed. And here we are, just where we dropped off to kind of sneak in the back end. The Bossilith is still over there, and he can solo my sorry butt, so I don't want to tick him off, but there is a treasure coffer over here. Now, for beating this dungeon, you're of course rewarded with item level 70 gear out of the various chests, and you're also then rewarded with 50 tomestones of mythology and 45 soldiery. Until next time, everyone.